You're good.
No, I was just going to say, I think that we can probably kick off for the day. Could I get a designated note taker for today?
I'll take notes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I don't think there's any new faces. Sophie might be back at some point. In that case, we can hop right into outstanding RFCs. First up will be decoupled dependencies from the Buildpacks. This has had a fair amount of active discussion inside of a Slack channel that Dan set up that is public. You can just go there and read the mountain of conversation that we're having. I think that we're sort of narrowing in on what we would want to put out for like an initial proposal to at least set up a framework or interface for this. It's a little bit difficult to kind of align on exactly what that should look like at this moment. And Jan is on vacation for the next couple of weeks. So this might slow down a little bit. I might try and put together some form of framework document just so that we can have more brainstorming out in the open instead of in less sort of long threads that you have to read. But I don't know how soon I'll be able to get to that. And I think that's all I have to update on this. Next up, we have proposal to publish multi-arch build packs. And Jericho, I assume that there's been some discussion happening in Slack here and there, but I don't know where any of that's gone because I have not been monitoring this at all.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the last kind of like takeaway that we kind of agreed on is that we need to basically get like stacks and builders created in order to actually test this stuff. So in order to move forward with this, I'm actually just focusing on that right now. I have not made an update to the RFC, but I can and just put that update in there and say we need to focus on this stuff. And I don't know what that means for the RFC. So I mean, I can kind of stay in limbo for now while I work on those things. And then maybe once we have some of that stuff in place, it might make more sense. What are your thoughts there?
If you don't necessarily, or if you aren't necessarily eliciting active sort of feedback on it, something we've done in the past is just draft RFCs. So we just go and just draft the PR. I don't know that I really care that much. The only thing that would do is like every week we wouldn't go over and be like, are there any updates to the multi-arch build pack RFC? So that's about the only thing. And then it would also just stay in the list of RFCs so that we knew that it was an active piece of work, but something was happening that required more feedback or more documentation or whatever. So if you're looking to do anything like to sort of indicate that more work needs to be done and you're not like actively pursuing like this RFC is ready to be voted on, then that might be all I suggest for this. Other than that, an update would be fine as well.
Okay, well, if anyone in the Paketo world has a preference on how I should approach that, feel free to let me know. And just like when you say draft, this is just adding a draft label.
Oh, no, you can literally just come here and you click convert to draft.
Oh, okay.
It'll just make it so that you can't merge the RFC. And then you can continue to comment on it like normal, like a normal PR. And then whenever you're ready, you'll just click like ready for finalized and it'll be open back as a normal PR again.
Okay, so yeah, I think I may just do that. And that way, I just don't know what this is gonna end up being once we kind of get all the other stuff that we need in place. I assume it'll be similar, but who knows? We might have to make some changes. So to save a review every week, I'll just put it in the draft, and then when we're ready to get some more input, then I'll take it out of that.
It sounds like at the end, this is probably going to be less of a proposal of like, here's the work that needs to be done, and more of a, I have some stacks and builders. Like, are you willing to either like let me donate them, or like spin up like a lot of the implementation work I think is going to kind of be no longer an issue on this. So yeah, it that sounds like it would work just fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And then finally, we have proposal to introduce new grawl VM. It still needs CLA approval. And it appears that there is active discussion on this from Java maintainers. Is there anything that anyone here would want to talk about further on this? Okay. In that case, we've gone through all of the open RFCs. Do we want to go back to any of these and talk about any more of them? Nope. All right. Next up, CNB updates and questions. I think that hold on. Dan posted in one of the Paketo Slack groups around a discussion that is being had inside of CNB that is eluding me right now. Yeah, there is a discussion. I'll come back and try and put it there, but there's like an open discussion looking for Buildpack author feedback.
I put it that first.
Ah, perfect. Thank you. I can actually take a look at this because yeah. So it's a CMP interoperability after the removal of stacks. If there's something that you want to really dig your teeth into on this, it looks like it is an incredibly active discussion, and one that is already has quite a bit of feedback in it. Other than that, I'm not sure that I have anything else, so we can move on. Any project updates? It's not really a project update. The only thing I wanted to like quickly highlight, just for those there, I was able to get the initial feature PR for the sort of for the base UBI stack to like pass the smoke test that's present. Rob, I just called out that I wanted you to take one last look, and then I think we're going to go ahead and merge that and hopefully have a release of the initial base UBI builder out. I don't want to say by the end of the day because that feels really generous, but you know, sooner rather than later. I want to get an actual release out, so that we can sort of be in a stage where we can start like showing it to people and being like, hey, how cool is this UBI? Am I right, guys?
Yeah, it'd be cool. We've been working on the Java side of stuff. I finished a whole pile of updates to libjvm for a 2.x branch to that as well, to bring that up to libcmb 2.x and libpack 2.x. So that's the whole tree of all the various Paketo tooling that's now has 2.x branches that support extensions running through. Because Packet's been done separately. So I've done libcmb, libpack, pipeline builder, and libjvm have all been brought up to have that support. I mean, none of this is officially released yet. They're all there depending upon commit hashes between each other in Go projects, but it's enough that it totally changed the code that I'd written for the UBI Java extension, which was an absolute disaster zone. And it now looks a lot cleaner because it's just basically working a lot like all of the other Java-based build packs do, except as an extension, so it has to do slightly different things. Got some more fun coming up with that, with how I do the environment configuration, because all the build packs today do their configuration by creating layers and putting the appropriate environment stuff into there, and extensions aren't allowed to create layers. But I think I've got a workaround. I think if I create all of my layers in the builder image, I can have a build pack just copy them into the run image later, which would be not into the run image, have them copy it into the layers directory during build pack execution, and then build packs puts it into the image correctly. So yeah, making great progress basically.
Nice. It might be that it's extensions not being able to write layers is a little aggravating. It might be worth us going up to C and B, and like even if it's like we can't write layers, like the fact that you can't set environment variables without writing layers is a little bit frustrating. So
I mean, you can set them. You can set environment variables straight into the builder or run image. If you're doing run image modification, you can add env lines to your run image directly. But the problem is if you want rebasing to work and you're staying with switchable base images, then you can't modify anything during the build phase. I think the solution I've hit might work. Well, I've got to do some real experimentation for the rest of this week and see if I can figure out what the context directory is when it's running those builds. Because if it's possible to have the generate phase write files that the Docker files can then include into the builder image, then we could probably standardize within Paketo or potentially upstream within CNCF to say, if we use / extension layers as a layers directory for extensions, you only need one build pack and it runs first. And it says, hey, if there are any layers present in the extension layers directory, I will copy them across to the layers directory and I'm done. And I'm always part of the build because I always participate as long as there's an extension layers directory. So.
It's not a bad call.
Yeah, just to echo what Varys said, the CMB team are like always interested in hearing real world feedback. A lot of this they develop kind of like either in isolation or like with toy examples, right? Because they don't have, they're not us, right? They're not like actually trying to try this stuff out. So they are very open to the feedback and they do want to hear like the sharp edges and what works well, what doesn't. So I would definitely encourage you to like, when you figured out one or two paths forward, right? Like write them out, summarize them, share them with the CMB team, let them know which ones, like the pros and cons of each. And then hopefully that will improve the upstream experience so that we don't have to do as many like machinations on our end.
Yeah, I was chatting with Natalie about some of this as well to make sure. I mean, we talk about stuff, but as you've said quite rightly there, the examples we came up with during the development of this were standalone build packs or standalone extensions that did things. Paketo is kind of unique at the moment in that it's rather a nice interconnected framework of build packs that we're attempting to connect extensions to. And I think that's probably where the parts of the original CNCF spec for extensions were lacking, because they didn't really look at the interplay between how extensions would connect to build packs in that manner.
Well, I'm glad to hear that things are moving along in that respect. Well, last thing is this open mic question / discussion topic, which is Stacks multi-arch testing.
That was me. So I have a PR in, I think it's Jammy Tiny Stack. I can remember what the order is, but and there is an integration test where it does just a basic pack build. What I wanted to kind of bring up here is that like I've created some repos where I've done some of this stuff, not using Jam and any of the Paketo tooling. And I'm actually running a kind of an integration test or whatever using BuildX. So it's a little bit meta, but you're running Pack inside of BuildX. And because Pack for some things doesn't actually need to talk to the daemon, to the Docker daemon, it actually just works. And then you just get this multi-arch kind of like Pack environment that you can test with. So what I'm kind of trying to get some input on is, if we're building multi-arch stacks, would you want to test them? Because right now the integration test only tests AMD 64. And so the code is going to change, but would you like that? And should I do that?
Without looking at this the code that you haven't committed yet, right? Like it's hard to say, but my instinct is that we would want to treat ARM64 at the same level of support as AMD64, at least at the stack level, right? Like each build pack, language family can make their own decisions, but I think the stacks, like, they're pretty fundamental, right? So we have to like actually exercise them, their functionality, test them, etc. So like, I think, I don't, maybe this isn't answering your question, but in my mind, like a desirable end goal is like, I can run the stacks integration test, like build the stack, right? And then they do the metadata test. That's fine. That's not really an integration test, but we just have to build the image in order to check the metadata. The interesting test is like, can I run a pack build with this? And I think like, it doesn't have to be like for the first iteration, but I wouldn't feel comfortable calling like stack support for ARM64 done until we have like the ability to run those tests programmatically in CI against every change, right? Otherwise, like, I worry that you get that kind of like unit test problem where it's like, well, it works in a bubble, right? Like the thing does what it says it's going to do, but what it says it's going to do isn't actually the real behavior. So I guess, like, does that answer your question? I'm not sure if it does.
No, it does. Yeah. So it sounds like I should go ahead and produce some example that you can look at and say, I like this or I don't.
Yeah, and in my super ideal world, it would be like abstracted, and so this is like, like similar to how we test multiple builders in the build packs. We just have like a list of the architectures in the stack tumble, and the integration test will just dynamically like blat across all of them. And then if and when we ever add more architectures, it's like nothing changes, right? The tests don't need to change to support that. The pack build test doesn't need to change to support that. There's less risk of forgetting to add a new test for a new architecture. Maybe I'm over optimizing because we don't really add new architectures that often, but we can debate that when we see the code. But yeah, I think if it's possible to get like a pack build, like end-to-end pack build test in the stack integration test, I think that would be a really good goal. And if for some reason that's not possible, right, then we can like figure out why that is.
Yeah, it's possible. I've already done it, so I just need to kind of like make it work within the Paketo kind of code base. So just another two things. The first one is I'm going to need to use a builder to test this stuff. And like right now, I'm already creating a simple jammy multi-arch builder that I can use for testing, and I probably will just use that initially. But then once we get this working, I would just, we'd have Paketo build one. Just use the Paketo one that you're publishing for that purpose or whatever, like a base, like a build packless kind of builder. It does nothing other than just provide the builder. And then, so that's the first thing. The other thing was, and so I'm getting nods, so that sounds good. All right, and then the other thing was, if I'm going to, I feel like I just lost it. Space. And oh yeah, this is what it was. A lot of the testing is done with OCam, like you're using Docker. So I would need to run Docker Buildpacks one way or another. And it seemed like logical to me to go add Docker Buildpacks kind of command to OCam. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is that what you guys would prefer? What I'm trying to do is not have, all this extra stuff that you're inside of the stacks repo. If you want it in OCam, I'll just put it in OCam to begin with.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. And just for the record, I think we pronounce it Occam after Occam's razor. There's a history in the Buildpacks team of having testing frameworks named after sharp tools like swords, and they've gotten smaller and smaller over the years. So it started off as like cutlass and then machete, and then now we're on Occam's razor. So that's the ridiculous naming scheme behind it. But yes, I think Occam would be a great place, or adding Docker X support to Occam makes sense to me, given that that's sort of its purpose, right? Like if we're saying that like the testing of the build packs and stacks requires Docker build X, that's what Occam should learn to do, right? So
yeah,
and then it's going back to the first point, builders. I confess I haven't thought about this at all, but I'm assuming that the end goal would be that builders would also be multi-arch. So you're not talking about making a new like repo and Docker Hub like entry for a new build packlist builder. It would be just extending the jammy tiny build packlist builder to have multi-arch support, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Then that makes total sense to me. There's a bit of a chicken and egg here, right? Like it's kind of tricky to like build a stack without a Buildpacks builder, but it's hard to build a Buildpacks builder without the stack. We had this problem when we spun up like the Jammy stacks. If you like, we can just like big bang it all together, right? Like if you have like a fork of one, you know, for testing, we can commit that change, make the release of the stack, and then flip the stack over to the Buildpacks builder once it exists and stuff. We can talk about the logistics of that when you get ready to merge the code.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah, this is great feedback. I think that's all I wanted to cover, so thank you.
Awesome. Is there anything else that people would like to talk about? Great. Give everyone some time back, and yeah, have a great rest of your week, y'all.
Likewise. See you, everyone.